Greetings, my fellow intellectuals and bookworms. Today, we're in for a long overdue book review. Sorry, I've just been so busy with last-minute work to graduate in June. Basically, they overwhelm seniors with last-minute work. But anywho, today we're going to be reviewing this book by Richard Nixon, The Real War. If you have watched my one of my earlier videos where I talked about upcoming book reviews, I said that Nixon was impeached. I know that's wrong, and I knew that almost the second I said it. He resigned before he was impeached, and he's generally considered a bad president. He didn't really know how to handle any of the problems he received, and yeah, that's pretty much all to say about him. Basically, The Real War, this book I got at a library book sale, written in 1972 by his own hand. Alright, there's really no way to say it, and also there's really no one who really likes Nixon. So, for the most part, if I insult him and or talk shit on him, no one's gonna complain. Also, this is my channel. You're welcome to comment down below and complain about it, but I'm just gonna say this preemptively. Fuck you. Alright? Now we got that out of the way. Basically, I give it a 2.5 out of 5 stars, and I'm being generous on that. First of all, it's long, it's rambling, and it's a diatribe. It rants against communism, which is kind of to be expected. After all, it was Nixon, and it was the Cold War. But he then proceeds to blame anything he doesn't like on liberals. He's like, oh, liberals are sympathetic to communism. Liberals are going to lose us the Cold War. Liberals hate freedom of speech. Liberals hate our way of life. That is... And I shit you not, those are actual quotes from the book itself. So it's your standard diatribe. He also complains about the press, which is to be expected when you think of statements that he's made. I even believe there's a few negative ones towards Jewish people, but if you've watched the documentary show on the History Channel, or I believe CNN, the Nixon years, you would know that diatribe against Jews is not to be expected. For example, an actual conversation that he taped that he talked about, he says, I believe that all Jews are disloyal. And he said somewhat disparaging things that African Americans can't lead worth a damn, therefore they should not be in charge of a ship. Now, yes, to a certain extent, he was a product of his time, but being a product of your time doesn't really give you a free pass when you do shit. Yes, to a certain extent, cultural relativism is important here. Basically, the idea that you should not judge people in the past by the morals of the present, but that really only applies to either different cultures or substantially older cultures. You can't say, oh, America in the 1960s qualifies. I mean, yes, we have newer things in terms of culture. We have new movies. We have movies like Vice, which was about Vice President Dick Cheney, and so on and so on. But you can't say that our culture has really changed that much since the 60s. Yes, we've become more tolerant. Yes, gays now have the right to marry in the U.S. But at the same... And there's the civil rights bills. But on the same thing, there's enough pieces that saying America of the 60s is absolutely nothing like America today is wrong. Therefore, cultural relativism doesn't apply, and judging someone from the 1960s by our standards kind of does make sense. It's almost like, if we're judging someone from 1900 by our standards, then we're wrong. Or if we're judging, I don't know, the Mongol Empire by our standards, then we're wrong. But in this case, we're not wrong to say, well, first of all, he was an asshole. Second of all, he abused his power widespread. He said horribly racist things, and he was just in general a dick and a terrible president. And there's no pulling punches on that. In addition, his proposed solutions are almost stupider than the problem he points out. He says, "Oh, the Department of Energy wasn't able to handle the 1970 oil shock, 71 and 73 oil shock, caused by the Arab embargo of the U.S. over its support for Israel and another instance." Well, his proposed solution is fucking shittier. He's like, oh, the Department of Energy sucks. Fuck the Department of Energy. Well, his proposal is basically to do away with the Department of Energy, which makes even less fucking sense. It's like saying, well, it's only lightly regulated anyway. What's the harm in deregulating it? Well, the fact that the entire economy could go into a meltdown, and the fact that with the brakes off, things would go to shit even quicker. I mean, modern day Republicans kind of suffer from the same problem. They're like, deregulation solves everything. Well, even deregulation of things like trains, I don't know, passenger rail, trucking, utilities, electricity, the effects today are very questionable. Like, even if it allegedly worked, I mean, no one can tell me that they notice the effects of deregulation. No. And yes, maybe an argument that absolutely nothing happened, positive or negative, would be a decent argument in their favor, except if you ask any person, they're like, oh, airlines suck now. They didn't used to suck. Now every available fucking seat is taken, and I'm always sitting next to a fat fuck who's 300 pounds. Oh, and my seat was sold to another person, so I'm kicked out of the flight and beaten just like United Airlines. There's no longer any free food, even on... The only free food you get anymore is if it's to Alaska or Hawaii, which is like a 5-hour plus flight, or a foreign flight. So the arguments for deregulation are fucking stupid. If anything, we probably need more regulation of things like banks, healthcare, and education. But that's kind of beside the point. Basically, it reads like a standard Republican diatribe, and some of these ideas are still important today. It's also kind of full of Bible thumping, like, oh, we're American, therefore we're Christian, therefore the Soviet Union sucks because mandatory atheism. And it's kind of offensive to an atheist myself. In addition, so this is out of date. I haven't read Hitler's manifesto, but that's not because I'm not interested in reading it, just to wonder what went through his fucked up mind, but because I'm not sure I want to be seen reading the book Mein Kampf. But if I had to compare this to any book, it reads less like a political biography or a political science book, and more like a long, rambling, jumbled up mess of a book. It seems Mein Kampf style, or Hitler rant style, if you will. So, why am I giving it a passing grade? Well, in this case, it's a 50%. Historical context alone. It's a decent primary source, and I feel like it somewhat helps explain why we made such fucking stupid decisions for a good chunk of the Cold War. So my final thoughts. Do I recommend you buy it? I would have to say no, simply because it's not that good. You could buy it like I did when it was like $1 at the library book sale. But, I was on the verge of quitting it, and I don't like quitting books because I like finishing things, but it has to be pretty bad for me to even consider it. But since it was only $1, I'm not going to complain. So I feel like if you're going to buy this, get it through a used bookstore for like $1 or a library book sale, read it if you have to, and then donate it, because it's pretty fucking bad. So, my final conclusion, don't buy unless you can get it for dirt cheap, like a penny off of Amazon or something. So, like, comment, and subscribe if you have not done so. This is Sean Hartnett from the channel Sean Hartnett saying, have a great day.